Hello and welcome back to Castle Motors, our playthrough of automation on 100 times difficulty, making big rectangular cars. It's now the 1970s, and it's time to build our replacement for the aging Portcullis and maybe Throne with fuel injection we just unlocked there. I'm letting the timer tick a little so I can get 4-speed automatics as well. See, that went 2 months at once because we have R&D. And now, in October of 1971, it's time to begin designing. So, the request that we had was to focus on boxer engines, which is not automation's favorite thing. And at the same time, what we're going to do here is try and hit these new upcoming markets, the utility sports and off-road and utility premium, which we've been aiming for and not really hitting so far. But first, I'm going to build a simple steel vehicle to replace our Portcullis, our big workhorse, where most of our sales are in the delivery trim. We'll want to aim it for to start. Well, we'll just point it at delivery, and I'll point at heavy utility. Want to get a good idea, build the big engine variant first when we tune this, and then we can build the small version. For those of you who remember what we've done so far, is we started with a large engine. We have a very underboard version, a smaller, cut in the same block. So this is the body we kind of settled on. This Jeepy Land Rover looking thing. And hopefully this car will come out very inexpensive, because we're going to try and put it in a large factory. Ooh, suspension types. I think I'm going to keep on the same theme as the Portcullis, which had front double wishbones and rear solid axle. We've got to create our engine here. So, if I was going to go for a kind of premium engine for a reliable off-roader, obviously V8, right? That's what you'd choose every time. But, I think some people are sick of seeing V8 so often, so we're going to go with a boxer. Definitely the 6-cylinder. Now we have 6.1%. That's very little familiarity in that compared to making just an inline, which we've done before. It's an opposed engine, our first actually, because we've only done inline engines. And boxers, automation doesn't necessarily like them. But whatever. I'm going to aim for an overhead cam. You can see it's extremely wide that way compared to, say, a push rod. But I'm going to see if I can pull it off. I like the push rods. They're very reliable. But we have some familiarity in overhead cam also. And it's a little more high-tech, a little more modern. That'll be better for our premium version of our car. I just have to make sure the engine bay is wide enough to fit that sucker. All cast iron. Aim for low cam profile, low compression. Oh yes, and the big new piece of tech, single point fuel injection. So you can see it's up on top. Basically, it's like a carburetor. I think some manufacturers actually call these electronic carburetors. But instead of air pressure pulling the fuel in, we now have a computer deciding exactly how much fuel to put in. There's much more precise control over the engine. And that means we're going to be able to get higher compression, all that good stuff. And for this new generation, we're switching to unleaded fuel to save the environment and to save ourselves from being banned from sale. Ooh, catalytic converters are here. Two-way catalytic converters are awful. They just ruin your whole engine. They create tons of back pressure. They're not even cheap to put in. But fortunately, there's no emissions laws in the game yet, so we don't need to have a catalytic converter. Those things are basically responsible for the whole malaise era of large, underpowered engines. And since we're unlocking our single-point fuel injection 7 or so years ahead of time, I might put 1 point of negative quality on there. That saves us a few months. Negative quality is mostly only worth it in automation on tech which you're unlocking early, because the engineering time cost can just balloon rapidly. It's actually not too bad right now, but I'm going to still put that way. And of course, compared to leaded fuel, we can get even less compression out of our unleaded fuel. So this is shaping up to be not a mind-blowing engine so far, but we will fine-tune it later. Let's see, with the overhead cam 2-valve, 4-valve would be the real high-tech way to go. In fact, maybe I will. We're revving to... yeah. 5,500. 3 liters isn't a bad size for this, but maybe we want to get a little bigger too. Now we're gonna probably choke this thing down, but at 3.5 liters, we've got 140 horsepower. That's not bad for 1971. It's way more than our old engines had. Of course, we'll see how it comes when we tune it in. Huh, this thing counts as a station wagon. Gives it no penalties as a family car at all. Which is a little, okay. Go build the SUV version first, or no, we don't want to. I want to aim for the utility first. We have actually 2 ways of going about this. We have the 2-door and 4-door pickup trucks. I'm going to start with the 2-door and see what the market survey says. Rear-wheel drive, 4-speed automatic. It's a locking diff. Always radial tires. We left off on drum brakes all around. Throw an off-road skid tray on there, and maximum cooling airflow. We'll have a big grill up here. Not that I'll necessarily actually put it on. Power steering and standard safety, maybe? So, right off the bat, something is wrong and they hate it. So I'm going to take a minute and figure out what that is. For starters, I've picked a monocoque frame. That's probably not what I want. Ladder frames make our cars real cheap. So for whatever reason, the heavy utility competition has a 66 off-road score, which would make it definitely like a 4x4 with all solid axles. That's kind of unexpected to see. What, for the record, does our Portcullis have? Looking at an off-road of, 40, about more normal. So the AI has made something that's completely changed the paradigm around heavy utility trucks, apparently. There's slightly more interest in the 2-door, or 4-door rather, 2 seat rows. In which case, I'll probably need to make this bed bigger. Yeah, we're kind of getting somewhere with this, but they're still telling me they hate it, honestly. It's not as good as the competition. Not very safe. Not very prestigious. Oh, and the handling's all messed up. That's probably part of it. It's still very oversteer prone. Oh, and the brakes are messed up. Gotta tune those. Now we're getting somewhere. As it's currently tuned, we're coming in something like equal to the competition. That's still not good enough, because we need to be better than the competition in a few years. Or arguably we don't. Sometimes very bad cars just sell fine in this current version of the game, but I want to try and at least make a good car here. There's not much interest in the disc brakes, even though we're pretty under-braked. They want crazy powerful brake pads? Yes, they do. Maximum rear brake force. They like rear disc brakes and front drum brakes, huh? That's what they like? Oh god. Imagine driving this car. So this line represents the rear grip, this dotted line. And this solid line represents the rear braking force. Now, there's more rear grip when the bed's full of heavy stuff, but still, this car looks like you'd slam the brakes and the rear wheels would just lock up and the front wheels wouldn't. You'd spin it every time you hit the brakes hard. That's pretty terrifying. There would really be a penalty for that. I need to go with bigger wheels and bigger tires. Yeah, that's more like it. Now we're filling out the wheel well. And that means that we can get bigger brakes inside those wheels and bring down the brake pads something a little more reasonable. Now, it's not great for the cost. You can see it becomes a lot less affordable to regular utility buyers, but there is interest in a four-wheel drive as well. So, I think this might actually make it our first four-wheel drive car, considering that everything's been rear-wheel drive so far. Yeah, I think we can make the four-wheel drive standard. It'll have to be a rear-wheel drive for delivery for sure, though. Oh, this bigger cockpit would probably do better with more seats in it, wouldn't it? Let's see. Heavy utility will not accept a car with more than 3 seats. So we can make it a 2 plus 2. There's cargo space back here. Those seats fold down. So we have really kind of a cross between an SUV and a pickup truck here, where the back of the cabin is cargo space. Heavy utility really does not want to pay for a basic radio, but I think everybody else kind of likes it. No, utility can take or leave it. No radio, maybe even go for the basic interior, just to keep costs down. They like it a little less, but put a quality point or two on there for comfort. And there's a lot of interest in better safety. Alright, now we're shaping up to see some numbers that are a little more interesting. This indicate we are 20% better than the current competition, and we get this thing running out of a large factory. It'll be nice and cheap too, hopefully. Here's something. They are pretty interested in, yeah, solid axles all around. That would make this much more of a dedicated work vehicle than the Portcullis was. Solid axles gives you the best off-road. Utility likes it, heavy utility likes it. We'll see how it goes selling this to other markets. That's a good start for a utility vehicle. We put leaf springs in the back. They ride less comfortable than coil springs, but they give us more cargo capacity. Fine-tune a little for gas mileage. We're reaching almost 18 miles to the gallon, making it our most fuel-efficient vehicle yet. And that's with the help of EFI, too. Yeah, I get some ride height on that. And some sway bars, so we're not swaying everywhere. Space the wheels out a little bit. They sure look funny in the body here. They're a lot narrower than the body itself. Let's really offset those. And that has a secondary effect of softening our roll angle without making the suspension stiffer, which is good for us. Alright, now we're talking. So this vehicle, whatever we're going to call it, this is a true off-road vehicle. Now I gotta see if I can sell the sport utility version and the delivery van version. Right now our biggest money earner is delivery, and they're gonna not like the off-roadiness as much. Oh, and while we're at it, change up the paint color. Got rid of the plastic, because it's 1971, it's a little too early for all that. So that's our utility variant. Now let's make the SUV. Now this is what would actually get the sport utility market as well. But for now, the only market whose score we can actually see is off-road. Because sport utility won't exist for 4 more years. That means it will exist when we're selling this car, but we can't tell how much they like it yet. So I have to kind of guess. I know they like nicer interiors and everything, but I might wait to make a nice interior version until we do our first facelift for this car. So off-road. They feel that our car is not that comfortable, which it certainly isn't. 2.5, that's a rocky ride. Not that prestigious, it's not that cool. Which, a V8 would help, we're not doing that. Y'all asked for a boxer to go in there. And aluminum panels would help, we're not doing that. We need to put this out of a large factory, make a different car with aluminum panels. Other than that, top speed, aren't getting much more of it. We're also pretty much running this engine at like full power. Normally I'd tune it down a little bit, but it seems like we're doing okay with the market score as is. In fact, they'd like it more powerful. But I'm not sure about that. We'll see how many variants of this engine I want to make at once. So they like a little shorter gearing, make the car get going faster. Gear spacing exactly there. That's a perfect balance between having a very low first gear and not too much wheel spin. Of course, they like the big wheels. And the narrow tires. They appreciate some real brakes. Oh, I know what they'd appreciate. Some real seats. Put 5 full seats in here, that gets us the off-road market. It'll get us little family sales too. We want a basic, standard, premium even. Yeah, now we're talking. That seems to be the balance between cost and desirability I'm looking for. So the SUV version here comes with, you know... By the way, there's huge descriptions. You have to select your part first, then click this question mark. You have an AM radio with a single speaker. That's it's not very advanced for the time. And a standard interior would include, like, actual door cards and a glove box, whereas the basic interior has none of that. If you've seen like an old 2CV, that's your basic interior. Doors are covered with a thin layer of wood. And they like a little more power, but not too much. So I'm not gonna make it any different. I'll keep it the same as the utility engine. Now suspension tuning. Right, this is the off-road way. I remember this from last time. Fairly stiff dampers. Fairly soft springs. That seems to be about the balance. Rather tall. Not too much in the sway bar department, but after a certain point, it gets way too uncomfortable. So we've gone from 2.5 comfort to 9. Whereas apparently the average off-road vehicle has 16. Our suspension's clearly set up for driving more than comfort, but it's a car. It works. This should sell nicely. Apparently it counts as a convertible. The hardtop is removable. Not that I have any control over that, there's only one option. It's actual hardtop. Now, this is going to require the most changes, but I'm going to do them because delivery is our biggest seller. So starting off, 133 in heavy delivery, and not super affordable. So what else can we do? They like it rear-wheel drive, of course, rather than the four-wheel drive. Get better gas mileage, which they care about. We like our standard interior with no radio. Lose the back seats, obviously, delivery. That's a must. In fact, it's actually a tough call between basic and standard. Price versus performance here. I'll go with the standard seats. Keep the manual locker. Lose the ride height. That can go. Keeping the vehicle up really high just makes it hard to climb into and load packages in and out of. They like the brakes. Pretty close to where they are. And they're still happy with drum brakes all around, too. Very simplistic. Now the engine, that might need to change a little. As we make it smaller, they get more happy. We've gone from 3.5 liters to about 3 liters. What else can I do here? Choke the exhaust until we're losing a little power. Choke it even more. Seem to be like, less exhaust until it's knocking. I lower the compression even more. Now, that's as small as I like it. So we've choked it down from like 120 horsepower to 108. Even milder cams. And since we're at it, we can reduce the maximum revs. So there, our small version of the engine makes 92 horsepower. That's a little more reliable. It's a lot more fuel efficient. Now, one last thing I might want to look at, since we have chosen basically all of the most simplistic options for our vehicle here, I can put some chassis quality on. Now that's an interesting one since it increases the cost of the vehicle a lot and the engineering time a lot. And once you've done it, it applies to all trims. You can't have it different between trims. That's the whole model. And you can never change it. If you start with negative quality because you're using really advanced stuff, you're stuck with it. And if you ever want to get rid of that, you have to make a new vehicle entirely. And I think I can sneak a +2 in there. And I'll have to check and see how that's affected the other versions. +2 is not too expensive for us. It's easy to add quality to a ladder frame with solid axles. +3. Delivery likes a little less, but SUV and utility is happy with it. So there. That's about what we'll do. And that will make it a little more expensive, but I'm hoping to make up for that with just large-scale manufacturing. Might need to introduce more colors to the lineup here. For the SUV, we'll make another new color. Call that moss green. And I'll use that for some of my sport utility from now on. So, new car, 3 trims, brand new markets to conquer, off-roadier than ever, more boxer-y than ever. Made in Gasmi, of course, it's a tradition at this point. I could go for a huge land plot so I can upgrade from a large factory to a huge factory later. But honestly, upgrading is probably not worth it compared to building a new factory, just because of the downtime on the factory. So let's see. The looking at $500 million just straight up for our large factory here. I think it's maybe worth to spend another $80 million on a QA, because it looks like I'm going to set the QA threshold pretty high to avoid recalls here. Of course, I'll need a large engine factory probably too. And again, I'm hoping to share this new engine between as many different cars as possible, so we can keep it centralized in a big factory making all the engines. And we're looking at an engineering time 70 months. That's a little steep. What's our engine looking at for engineering time? 90 months. Yeah, that's that fancy fuel injection for you. I might need to trim that down, in fact. Yeah, if I go from 4 valves to 2 valves, it'll be a lot easier to engineer, but we're going to lose a good chunk of horsepower too. I don't know, if I really want to make this engine last, maybe I should just put the engineering time in now. Maybe what I should have done was prototype this ahead of time, but it's a little late for that. Anywhere else I can save engineering time? Put a baffled mufflers, maybe. A little more negative fuel system quality, because it's a fancy new thing. Of course, that'll negatively affect the cars a little bit, but what can you do, right? That saved me about a year. Gonna have to cut the corners somewhere. First, put more money into it. I'd like to aim for about 60 months if I can. Unfortunately, the pressure to get this out means this might not be the most reliable motor that Castle Motors has ever made. 5.5 years with some penalties. We can shoot for it. Making about 8,000 engines in the existing factory. If I'm lucky, I won't have to build a new one for now. But it doesn't look like I'm that lucky. If only I had a bigger land plot to expand this thing with. But it'll have to be a new factory for now. May want to go for the huge size plot for the engine factory here. I can upgrade it later. Guess that puts us out in the desert for whatever reason. Of course, then I don't really need this factory producing anything. I can dump that. And if I'm just not making enough factories, I'll run the other factory in parallel. Since I'm hoping to unify everything here. So there, both factories upgraded medium 3, making the new engines in 5.5 years. And it's apparently only just enough. Now, you only need to trim off a little time for the car itself. We'll go on baseline everything except for funding. And we can hopefully get this improved on our first facelift. And then prices. Around 15,000 sounds about right. I think that's something like what we've been selling stuff for already. And our production cost starts off high for the first facelift. Or if I take tooling out, you can see it's a chunk lower. It's So I'll put it right there. Between 14 and 16,000, depending on what options you have here. And it estimates that only delivery will be sold almost entirely in 90% of our cars. We'll see if that's true. Ooh, and let's make it screw your pre-orders. 100% deposit required to pre-order this car. Hopefully that won't, like, ruin my company somehow. Now, altogether, we're looking at a cost of $1.24 billion, which, strictly speaking, I can do without a loan. Now, I'm not going to approve this immediately, because I have other stuff to do. The throne needs to be either updated to use the new engine, or replaced with a new model entirely. And I'd like to build some kind of small factory dedicated luxury McFast car. But I think I'm going to wait until Sport Utility is in the market screen that I can see it. So for now, I'm just going to update the throne. And it's going to use the new engine, which should hopefully fit. Yes, it can. Ah, yeah. I kind of forgot that this thing was the SUV. Yeah, not really a premium off-road vehicle. It's more of a proto-minivan. And it's supposedly marketing to family more than anybody else, which means it's not marketing to anybody very well with the new engine in there. It's not really a great sign. Re-engineering the safety is expensive. I don't really like to do it, but since this is going to take until the new engine gets finished to be engineered, you know, whatever, right? Seems to be a sweet spot, 175 tire width between having tires too wide and having them too narrow so you get wheel spin, whereas too wide pushes you more towards the oversteer side of the steering graph. Can I aim for family utility premium here? We're getting a body age penalty because, you know, even by 1971 this thing looks old. It's going to be worse when this thing comes out in like 76. But what the hell. Put some alloy wheels on it. What else can make this premium? Go for a luxury interior? Even family utility premium doesn't really want to pay for that. We'll slap some quality on it. Honestly, the market scores on this thing won't sell, but I think it probably just will. That seems to be the pattern. Who needs to, you know what we're doing, or why we're doing it? Newer, faster SUV. So baseline, this old car has a score of 97 in utility. We switch it over to the new engine. It gets noticeably worse. Similar deal. More tire width, more transmission speeds, more top speed. Not that they really like having the car able to be controlled. They'd rather just be short-geared. It's going to be a lot easier once I finally unlock traction control in like 20 years. I don't know how this got stuck on luxury interior or whatever, premium. Or was I selling it that way before? Ha. Could re-engineer it with hydropneumatic springs and then the premiums would really like it. I'd do the same thing for the other one. Luxury interior, hydro springs. Yeah, that goes from interested in family utility to just destroyed for a very slight boost of family utility. Maybe we'll keep it premium. We'll go with the Hydro Springs, why not? We'll be weird with it. So this is now a very unusual van. And we'll keep it in the same old factory. And what do I gotta do to make the engineering take 5.5 years? Well, we're already at a lot. 34 months just from re-engineering the safety. That's the bulk of our engineering here. But we can take some funding out, take some pressure off. Tell them to get it done, you know, no rush. Save a little money there. Alright. And we'll sell these things for $20,000. Why not? Sounds like a lot is a lot for our company anyway. It says we'll be making not enough engines. And that's why I didn't sign off on everything. So what else can I do to get more engines out of you suckers? I don't get it. We're making like 15,000 engines. I don't think we're making that many cars. I wouldn't think we'd be short on engines. Looking at 9,000 of those and 1,000. I think he just doesn't like those 2-engine variants and one of them's not being used for anything. Alright, so this is the 5.5 year plan. And we are going to take out a loan for, not the whole thing, but a few $100 million. Just in case anything unexpected happens. But we should be able to totally pay for this. I'm just taking this loan as a safety net. And we'll sign it off. Wait, no, not yet. I need to name this thing. That's right. Now, nobody suggested a name. And I'm not actually the biggest fan of Automation's random names for most of these things. So for our big workhorse vehicle for the Castle line that's replacing the Portcullis, which had the drawbridge engine, we're going to call it... Did I already call it something the moat? I feel like I did. We have a throne. Call it a Barbican. Had to look it up, but that's like a little castle outside the big castle I have to walk through. And the engine... Alright, what do I want to name the engine? The mill. Screw it. Alright, finally, that took long enough. Everything's named. Loan's in order. We're going to make this thing. And we're going to find out how it's going to sell. So right now, it seems like the Portcullis is bringing in 3 times the revenue of the throne. But the actual profits, if I can trust these numbers, and I don't always trust these numbers, are pretty similar. At least it just shows you how much margin we're making on the throne. Well, technically it's the same percent margin that I set, but whatever. What else? We can see that the dealerships are happy with us. Dealerships are an interesting thing to talk about. There's still a lot that's not understood by players about dealerships in version 4.1 of this game. But we know that they set a margin. And that margin is not directly based off supply and demand. In the old version of the game, back in like 3.7, your car would pretty much be priced automatically to whatever would make the most profit based on like a supply and demand curve. And that would result in cars selling for prices that just seemed unreasonable And automatically, you the player had no control over it. If people wanted to pay $82,000 for your equivalent of like a Ford Escort, they were going to do it. And you get the profits. So dealerships here, you set a price you sell the car to the dealership at. That's your price. And the dealership sets a margin. But their margin is based directly off of how many months of pre-orders there are currently. They price up a little bit based off of that. And off of the desirability of your car compared to competition. We're going to have an arbitrary chart for that. Which if I find it in the Discord, I'll post it in here. That's all prone to change too, of course. Ooh. You have a recall. See, now this one's tricky. There's only a 10% chance of this production issue with our engine being discovered. Of course, if we own up to it, it will hurt our reputation, because we're supposed to be a reliable company. We're not supposed to have any, recalls happen. Although not that much. We could try to hide it, but it would really hurt if it's discovered. I'm going to pay up for now, but sometimes it's fun to play that risky. Our reputation, by the way, is getting quite strong at 27.8. It doesn't really tend to get a lot higher in this version very easily. The good catalytic converters are coming up on the tech tree, although we're never going to use catalytic converters in this game. Oh, and turbochargers are coming up. So turbochargers, they're a little unfair, because the AI never ever uses turbochargers. And on top of that, they're shockingly cheap and reliable, and basically everybody wants them. I think they're a little overpowered in automation, so I'm probably going to be avoiding them. Of course, then again, if we're targeting like utility markets, they're often kind of towards turbochargers anyway. They want low-end torque, and they don't really add that. Oh, by the way, it looks like pre-orders of the Throne have gotten away from us. There's now a 5-year deep pre-order list. So I better just start charging, like, completely unreasonable prices for those. 22,000 instead of 17,000. Let's see who still wants to pay. That's reduced our pre-orders. They're still coming in faster than we can sell the cars. And that still means we're going to have to pay that money back. Same problem with the Portcullis. It's getting pre-orders into like infinity here. So let's just make our prices stupid. And, and see what happens. Money is still coming in faster than ever. I could spend a lot more on advertising, not that I think we really need it. Of course, if I'm, trying to get a high score, I suppose I should be, huh? So Fruinia, we've unlocked them now. So we may as well start trying to sell our cars over there a little bit. Let's just throw a few million in there. Fruinia is not very expensive to market to because it's not a very large or wealthy country. So you can get pretty high marketing levels in here for costs that are, relatively small. If I get this high on gas, I'll be spending hundreds of millions instead of like 13 million. So there, that marketing budget has ballooned. And R&D, I'll try and keep ahead on the bodies as well. We're now spending a huge amount of money on both marketing and R&D. Yeah, I added like $50 million to our expenditures. So, if we ever run into financially hard times, I need to make some cuts somewhere. We have another problem with our cars. Portcullis. Ooh, 25% chance of discovery. See, if I would do a quiet recall, even if it's discovered, we get less reputation damage than if we do a full recall. Our prestige would suffer, but I'm not as concerned with that, because we're more of a reputation-focused company. Now that's going to help us hit those new sport utility luxury type markets, but you know. So someone on the Discord, I think I was saying this and I got off track, sent a save file in where they couldn't figure out why their company was going bankrupt. And they had a model on sale with 518 months worth of pre-orders. They had like $1.5 billion in the bank. They had to pay back $2.3 billion worth of pre-order when their new model started and replaced the old one. So that's funky, needless to say. I think as people realize that the Throne's gonna change to a new production, there's just so much demand for the old model that there's now 5+ year wait lists, which I can't forcibly make them stop doing. Even at a 100% pre-order fee, we still have a little bit of pre-orders for our new vehicle, the Barbican. That's kind of impressive, but it has at least trimmed the pre-orders down quite a lot. Oh, yep, you can see it. $1.5 billion lost last month due to paying back the Throne's pre-orders. That's just stupid. You know, I left the Portcullis in production, and I don't think I left an engine factory for it, so I replaced the engines we were making with the other ones. I guess I'll have to find a car to put in the Portcullis factory. The public's discovered our quality issue that we tried to cover up. Reputation damage. New Throne version. Barbican is now out. So we've stopped actually making the Portcullis because we can't make the engines anymore. I replace all the factories. Let's just set the price of the Portcullis at $1 million or something. Until, $1 billion for the car. That seems to be the hard cap. Cool. Until I replace that factory with something. There's another little price spike as we pay back some pre-orders from the Portcullis, I think. And you can see that the dealerships are fairly happy with the sales of the Portcullis, which literally nobody is buying. I think someone on the Discord proved that dealership happiness was kind of a direct result of the absolute value of their margin, not the percent value. Which is sort of dumb, as it strongly favors more expensive cars over cheaper ones, even if they are not selling well. And often it means that with the very same car, the dealerships would rather have a high price than a low price. Because they can sell at a more margin, but that seems a little not very supply-demandy to me. So, now, the Throne is still making a steady profit, as it used to. The Barbican is making much more money than the Portcullis ever did, it looks like. Owing, of course, partly to our large factory size. And even with a 100% pre-order, pre-orders are still slowly piling up. People are paying full price for this car now a few months ahead of time. We're about to unlock cassette players. Very high-tech. And all-wheel drive. That'll be a big improvement over 4x4s for any car that we want to have all the wheels driving. We want it to be comfortable and easy to drive. So I'm just going to give this a couple more months and we'll check out how our markets are doing. It's now 1977. Actually going to 1978. We are bringing in, holy crap, how much money? Wait. Oh no. Oh, we're fucked. Oh, this is a problem. Yep. I don't think I have... No, so there's a 10% deposit. Okay. No, hold on. I need to think about how to talk about this. Yeah, so the Portcullis. Our workhorse, mostly delivery vehicle. I have set the price to $1 billion. You can pre-order it with only a 10% deposit. That is $100 million, with the remaining $900 million due at delivery. And at that price, last month, 67 people decided that they wanted to pay $100 million deposit to get a Portcullis later. This is a 10-year-old car. And I don't have 17 buyers in this corner of the market screen either. So it's not just the GT and GT Premium people who've picked our cars for some reason. There's apparently somebody in, like, delivery. If we look at the budgets, the spread, the average delivery person has a $12,900 budget. There's a Gaussian curve with ends on either side of plus or minus 9,000, right? So between, some of them have a $20,000 budget, some of them only have a few $1,000s. That's fine. But someone apparently has $1 billion to spend on a truck. They didn't look at that and decide they'd rather buy someone else's. They decided they want to buy mine. I don't know what's happening. So I'm raking in $6.7 billion right now. And at some point, I'm going to have to pay that money back if I ever stop making the Portcullis. Or I can just run the Portcullis as a pyramid scheme. I can never build that engine factory for it. I can keep stringing along forever. But if I shut down that factory, I'll have to pay back the pre-orders immediately and probably go bankrupt in an instant. Although I am earning interest on that money in the bank, so that might help a little bit. We now have $48 billion in the bank. I think maybe most of that money is not legitimate per se. But that's where we're at. So our my flippant decision to price us at $1 billion so nobody would buy it might come to characterize our entire company. Anyway, before I close out the episode, how's our sales? How's our sales looking for normal cars? We're still not really breaking into off-road premium, utility premium. We're getting a pretty small amount of sales there. The limit to awareness, 5-6% really isn't actually that bad. Our main markets are getting 10 to 17% of our awareness worth of sales. That is to say, out of all the people who would consider buying us, 17% did, which is a pretty good market share. We're selling a lot to utility, a lot to off-road, a lot to delivery. Nothing really crazy changed there. Really, it looks pretty similar to what we were seeing before. So we know our new vehicles are a success, and they're a good replacement for the Portcullis. But the Portcullis is apparently worth $1 billion now. And, yeah. Gonna have to figure that out. Maybe I should go back to a previous year save or something and not do that. But I'll figure that out. In the meantime, next episode, we will be, I think, replacing the throne and updating the Barbican. So let me know what you want to see us make. And help me think of names. I'm really running out of good castle-themed names for cars.